Chapter 30 is our last chapter where we assign codes for anything. So Chapter 30 is on Hcpcs. Okay, we call them level 2 codes. We've mentioned them back when we started CPT. First thing you need to know, you do not need to buy a Hcpcs book. Okay, so there are 3 coding manuals for a physician's services. An ICD-10, which we've done in the beginning of the semester, CPT, which are the procedures, and Hcpcs. You don't have to buy a Hcpcs book. Okay, I'll show you where everything is in Blackboard in just a second. Okay, Hcpcs covers things like durable medical equipment, drugs, supplies like casts, splints, that kind of stuff. Okay, so I want to cover it because it is on your CPC test. I think it's very easy to pick up. I don't think it's very difficult. The hardest part's going to be the drugs, which I'll show you in just a second. But we do have to cover it because you do have to know how to look up these codes in a book. You'll need this book for your test when you take your CPC test, but you don't have to have it for the class. Okay? So Hcpcs are things like durable medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, supplies, dental services. This is where ambulance services are billed, vision, okay? All right, so same way, you look it up under the alphabetical index, okay, and then you look up the code description. So we're going to talk about drugs in just a second. So you can look up ventilator, okay, any type, okay. So it should be pretty straightforward if you made it through CPT, okay. So this is the section of your textbook that tells you the breakdown of all the sections. Okay, so we're not going to get too deep in the weeds in this, but I do want you to make sure that you know it exists and how to look up some basic codes in there, okay? Same thing with symbols. It's got symbols just like the CPT book does on the bottom of the page, okay? It's got appendices, okay? The biggest thing is about drugs. So I'm going to go through an example with you. So looking in Blackboard, okay, this is that modifiers document that we talked about in the very beginning when we talked about CPT, okay. These are copies of pages out of the Hcpcs books that you need for your homework. Okay, that's why I say you don't have to buy a book. So it's all right here together, okay. So I'm going to take you through an example. So you might want to have this handy as we go through the example. So here's one of your homework questions. So let's do this one together. Okay. So we've got this patient. He's being prepared for a kidney transplant. The nurse is administering 100 milligrams of Xenapax IV parental. So they are asking us to code the drug only. Okay. So first thing that you need to know, so we know it's a drug. Okay. And so in the back of your Hcpcs book, in Appendix A, there's a list of drug names, okay? And I've given you the pages out of the Hcpcs book that you need. Okay, so I go to the back of I go to Appendix A in my Hcpcs book, and I see that Xenapax isn't listed. So that tells me that Xenapax is the brand name, and I have to figure out the generic name, because everything in the Hcpcs book for the drugs, it goes by generic name. So I don't know what that name is, so I got to look it up. So good old Google tells me that Xenapax, the generic name is this. I don't know how to say that. Okay, so I'm going to look up this word in my Appendix A. Okay, and I'm going to see that generic name leads me to code J7513. Okay, so find the Hcpcs page that has the code description of J7513. So when I go to my code description for J7513, I see the name of the drug, I see the route, and I see the dosage. Okay, here's the big trick with drugs. You are probably going to have to bill for more than one unit. That's why you have to pay attention to the units in your case. Okay, so let's first make sure the route is right. So it says IV parental. Okay, so that's right because the code description says parenteral. Okay, but then it says 25 milligrams, and this patient is getting 100. Okay, so we are going to code that as J7513 times 4, meaning 4 units. Okay, so in your homework, you're going to express it like that. Okay, most of the time it will be 1 unit, but with drugs, you really have to be careful with the dosage to make sure that you bill for enough units, and you get paid for the amount of units that you give the patient. Okay, so that's the big thing with Hcpcs. You've got, here's your list of appendices. Okay, now while we will cover this content for your exam, there's not going to be looking up any Hcpcs codes for your exam. Okay, you're only going to look up Hcpcs codes for your homework, which you have in that document. Okay, if there's any questions on the exam about Hcpcs, it's about content related. So things like what does Hcpcs cover, like DME, ambulance, that kind of stuff. Okay, it's things that you don't need the book for. Okay, so that brings us to our last chapter of looking up codes. You do have some additional chapters that are on things like practice management, compliance, that kind of thing. So those aren't looking up codes, but that is content that is covered on the CPC exam. So we make sure that we cover it in the course so you're prepared.